I love human beings. I love human beings. I think it was important to kill them. Yeesh.
Recording.
Recording.
There we go. So we can stop talking about all the stuff we were talking about before this started, you know?
How did you learn to play the kettle or whatever? What's the right word for it?
Steel pan, steel drum.
Steel pan. Okay. How did you
I
learn how to play it?
It was a high school credit course offered in my high school.
Right.
A teacher who was a department head, Randolph Karamath.
Yeah.
Me. Then I learned from his genius daughter how to play. And then 2 years later, I met the head of the lineage, who's Professor Panman Pat. And he played on Super Dave. Remember Super Dave?
I don't actually, but
Okay, yeah, it was a comedy show, but yeah, so
okay.
like it's, going back 70 years. I think they say it's the only instrument invented in the 20th century.
That sounds right.
Right? And it's basically, oh, you guys really like the circle of fifths? Well, what if you just designed an instrument in the circle of fifths? How about that? Right?
Incredible.
So imagine, I don't know any math at all. People online think I'm like this math guy. I'm like, no, I actually just have the circle of fifths behind me. And if your equation doesn't work on that, then you're probably wrong somewhere.
At some point, I want to find out a lot about that because
Me too. I'm still discovering it.
The math and the music is very related to nematics and complexity. It's the same. That's the language that I don't quite have yet, but it's all about energy being bounded and having different frequencies.
Well, I mean, when I first started talking to these guys, it was about music theory. And I thought I knew something about music theory. And then I presented my ideas, thinking they're advanced, of course. Right. And then I'm like, oh, nice provincial idea. What about this system? And what about that system? And I'm like, what? And so there's like a circular and a linear and a tetrahedral and a dodecahedral.
Exactly. Oh, man.
Right? And it's like, wait a minute. And first of all, we've been worshiping only one representation system for a long time. Exactly. The linear one.
Right.
And the people who don't have the linear system have been taught that they're a circle.
Oh, okay.
It's almost like a Pythagoras.
Okay.
It's almost like Pythagoras' speech against Hippasus when he decides to force him to drink hemlock too. It's like, no, linear system. I don't know who. Okay. Oh, so Hippasus was who the Pythagoreans killed when he brought up irrational numbers and they couldn't fit it into their system.
I love human beings. I love human beings. I think it was important to kill them. Yeesh.
And they are who we worship.
Okay.
Right? Euclidean geometry, Pythagoras, that's who we worship. And we don't see what they were themselves capable of, even though we make imperfect people idols, but because we need them to be perfect, we don't want to see all of the other stuff.
Right. Nice. Nicely said.
And that's why I asked you, you saw what humanity looked like in two completely different systems of government. Not many people in the world have seen that.
Really?
Think about it. How many people have seen two opposite systems of government lead to the same club?
Fair enough. Okay.
That's scary because that's very unsettling for any one human to take in, that the utopia also contains a billy club.
Yup. You got that right.
I don't know what I'm saying. Can you?
No, I get that.
right? You know what I mean? Like I'm saying it because I'm trying to describe what you're saying, but I wasn't there in Portland. I wasn't there in Poland.
Right.
You saw the same thing in Poland and Portland. That's the question I want to ask you. I'm going to put myself on mute so you can, right? Because I've said a lot of things, but you've seen it with your life.
So the same thing in Portland and Poland is violence. That's the issue. It always comes back to violence. Uh, Obviously, in Poland, we know about the violence. You know, it was Hitler's violence, and it was just extraordinary. Uh, and as I said, I grew up with that in my house because my folks lived through that. They had, before the war, they had big families, and my dad was pretty well off, and my mom's family had like a bakery. So these are good middle class people who came in, and everybody was put in this were as bad. I don't say worse. They were as bad in that they crowded. The overcrowding was ridiculous. The starvation and lack of food was ridiculous. The Germans used a lot of ghetto labor to build, to do clothes. Lodz was a clothing town, a lot of clothing manufacture. And so they used slave labor to produce boots and, you know, shit like that. And then in 44, violence really happened. Lodz was disbanded and everybody went on a tour of the concentration camps. I say a tour because at that time it was late in the war. And so the Germans were pulling in the camps closer and closer to Germany, right? So like my dad, and what you had were these incredible forced marches from camp to camp to camp to camp to camp. Yeah. And my dad tells stories of, and both of them were in a lot of camps, you know, but for short times because they kept pulling them back and pulling them back. And then there's, you know, a gazillion very traditional camp stories. You hear them all the time. Uh, and these are from my mom, so I don't know how many are actually real or how many are apocryphal, but it doesn't matter. One particularly horrifying story was she was in a line that was on its way to the gas chamber. Uh-huh. And a friend of hers from town, from their neighborhood where they lived, walked up to her and said, Nadja, get off this line. And she had no idea why. She just said, get off this line. And that's why I'm here, or at least that's one of the reasons I'm here. Okay. So Portland or Madison, either one. Well, Portland, I'm not there, but I can feel it because of what I went through at Madison, which is armed stormtroopers. I mean, the guys in Madison were not stormtroopers; they were regular cops. But this was 1970, and so they were just normal brutal. They were the same cops that created the police riot in Chicago in 1968. And they walked into a peaceful demonstration. I mean, it was a sit-in, so. And they decided that the way to deal with the sit-in was to come in with fucking clubs and tear gas and riot gear, which of course was like, it just blew it up, man. It's like putting a match to it was incredible. And the thing you're seeing in Portland now is the next stage of that, or a different stage of that, where now they really are fucking stormtroopers. It's fucking scary because they have no uniforms. You can't see their faces. I mean, they have combat uniforms, no badges. You have no idea where these people are from. they're basically gangsters, or they could be. I mean, they could be anything. They could be. I mean, I actually heard something. Do you want to say something? I'm sorry. Are you trying to say something? Wait, let me.
No,
Yeah.
let me unmute. I remember seeing a video on the street of people, two people in, the paratrooper uniform,
Right.
abducting someone.
Yeah. They
And you're
put them
like,
in a fucking
what the
black
fuck,
van.
dude?
Yeah, really? What the fucking deed? That
Dude,
was.
let me tell you something. If somebody comes to me and they
There,
don't have a badge,
there you go.
game over. You don't have a badge, no shot
No,
am I getting into that Aerostar. Are you drunk?
unless they beat the shit out of you, and then
And
you
you know
get
what?
the truck.
It's almost like you'd risk the beating, because if you get into that Aero van or that Aerostar, you may never come out. Honestly,
I
like I
heard
saw that
recently.
and I was like, dude, no.
Could you imagine? I mean, and with I heard, I haven't confirmed this yet. I heard that prick is using Blackwater mercs in as those secret police. Could you
Fuck off.
I,
That's
hey, we've been
crazy.
using is that nuts? I don't know if it's true, but I won't be surprised if it is true. It is crazy. Crazy.
Well, I mean,
Welcome.
yeah. So, okay, so you experience what you experience in Europe. You're coming over here. What's going through your mind as you're on the way here? And what was the rude awakening you had in Madison? I'm going to go back on mute.
Okay, well, Madison, first, I came here when I was 2. I came over in 1948. So, from what I remember, it was all good. It was all good. In fact, it was all good all the way through high school, because I was clever. I was in a homogeneous community, Jewish working class, and my family took a classic path for Jewish working class, which is first we lived on the Lower East Side, then we moved to the Bronx, which was one step up. Then we moved to Queens, which was another step up. And in Queens, Dad built his own house. And so he was done. It was like, okay,
Oregon Trail.
I now have a nice house. This is as good as it's going to get. So there you go. And I was in high school, blah, 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 blah. My first rude awakening was, at least on the political side, was in my first year of college. I went to Columbia. In my first year of college, I went to a CORE meeting, Congress of Racial Equality. It was a very early meeting. And the thing that was cool about the meeting was that at the end of every meeting, it always ended with "We shall overcome," singing "We shall overcome." So that was like a hymn. You could almost consider it a religious ceremony in a lot of ways, because there were certain rituals. This person spoke.
Interesting though that.
Just jump in.
No. I think, isn't it interesting that music was an integral part of the message?
Music was the message, the same way it is in any religion. It's the hymns and the singing together that lift you to that other experience, because religion works when you have almost an out-of-body experience. And what gives you an out-of-body experience is music. It's the hymns. And you can start from Gregorian chants and you could map the history of the world.
It's almost like during church,
Yep.
we have these sections. We have the sermon, right? And
Right.
we have the band, and we have the chorus and everything, and we have the prayer time. And people think that the worship is all in listening to the pastor. Some people think all of the worship is in the prayer. But if you see what gets people animated,
Yep.
you can't deny that when the music is good, people don't turn themselves into physical antennae. Right?
Right.
That's what that is. It's an antenna. And the hand isn't like this, eh? It's like this.
That's right.
Why is that?
That's a nice way to say it. Yep. Yep.
Right?
And if you look through the history of the civil rights movement, any churches have always been starting from, well, really forever, but in America, starting from slave time. It was the church and the hymns and that pulled people together. That was the thing that allowed people to feel that they were part of something bigger than themselves.
Something is lost in a message which just contains read write.
Contains what?
Read write. Just read write.
No,
yeah.
No. Read write has its own great advantages, no doubt. But in terms of feeling part of a group, and now feeling part of humanity, and just feeling part of something bigger than yourself, that's music. Music has always done it. That's why music is music. It does it even up to today, because people become fans. So that I'm a Jay-Z fan. Okay, well, that identifies me, and that allows me to talk to people I would never otherwise talk to, because we wouldn't have anything in common.
That part is scary. I was I was on a call yesterday with the Jamaican students, and I think I brought out a quote from Vybz Kartel, who's a popular dancehall artist. And he said, if you can't buy oxtail, hold a chicken back.
Yeah.
And so what that means is, if you can't afford the oxtail, you're going to have to do with the chicken back for now, right?
Okay.
If you can buy oxtail, hold the chicken back, because nobody is badder than a gas pain. Nobody is worse than hunger.
Nobody is worse than hunger.
Right?
There's nothing like hunger. I had a conversation once with my dad, and he said to me, he said, until you've seen people hungry, and I mean really hungry, you have no idea of what humanity is about. You just don't know.
For people to know that they're starving off a population.
You can't fool around with food. People have to have food.
And I heard we have about a 200 trillion caloric deficit in about 2027. Is that the number?
I don't know what that means.
So last time I checked, the World Economic Fund or UN proposed that we're going to have a massive food caloric shortage by 2027.
I don't buy that.
No? Tell me.
They're wrong, because a couple of things. One is urbanization. The world now is over 51% of the people live in urban areas. And the demographers expect that by someplace around 2050, something like that, over 75% of the world is going to be in urban areas. So one of the implications of that is there's going to be a huge amount of land to grow crops on.
Right.
It's going to radically increase the amount of arable land. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with climate change, blah, blah, blah. Don't know. But still. And the other thing that's happening is that scientific agriculture is moving to small farms.
Yes.
And what that means is that the productivity yields are going to be, they're going to be double, triple, who knows how many times that we have now. And I'm seeing, I'm a friend, Facebook, Twitter friend, with a guy named Stephen Putter in Africa, and he's at the forefront in my universe. I'm sure there's other people, but in my universe, he's at the forefront of scientific agriculture.
Wow. I knew a guy, and he had like glass experts to let in the right UV light to make sure that there's oil in the vegetables so that they can survive the transport. I'm like, damn, you spend that much time on glass?
Yep.
Even the AI, I'm going to back 150. Did I ever send you the video on data gravity? I'm going to send it to you right now in the chat. It's just about how might we track the 150 different inputs that go into growing? And then based on that, how might we send out and share our greenhouses information together such that the yield. And who knows what they're going to create, right? We don't know. Look, it's like the mice and telomeres, right?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, add to that the drones, the geolocations, the satellites, the satellite phones. I mean, this is already out there.
The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly correct. And I mean, the model is, look what they did to marijuana growing. They used to grow marijuana when I smoked back when I was a kid. You could smoke a joint, 2 joints, and you'd still be okay, right? These days, the last time I smoked must have been, I don't know, about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. But it was the new breed of marijuana. I took 2 tokes and I fell on my head. I don't know how these kids do it. Now, all of that's scientific agriculture. You got a bunch of, right? And they figured out, and they don't enrich it after, they actually grow it that way. And so
Yoni had a fridge, and you open the fridge and all you have to do is plug the water in the fridge on the top. I wish it was more complicated than that. I'm going to send you the video.
I'd love to see that.
But it's just like, here's the fridge. And so you want to grow your own? Well, you probably don't want to become a botanist, right? No, you just want to grow your own. All right. So we'll help you grow your own. And imagine he had 2 million pre-orders in 2018. And he got funded. And now they're in production. Hold on, where is it? It's called Usatru. I'll find it. It's like, whoa, that's where you are with it? You're like at personal scientific agriculture? Well, fine.
Now, refrigeration is a huge problem in Africa.
Is it really?
Huge.
Wow.
And I'll have to look, make sure you send me that link, because see, the other thing that's going on is there's been a lot of writing about how the new opportunities are at the bottom of the global pyramid, which makes sense because America and in the rich countries, we already have all the shit we need. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, how many gadgets can you buy? And so those are all mature markets. populations are stable, they're not growing. There's no growth. There's no growth in mature markets. On the other hand,
If anything, there's only growth in serving the 25% of the Canadian population, which is over the age of 65.
there you go.
Right?
You got that
But
right.
if you want to serve a 19-year-old, well, that's the average age of a Kenyan. Last time I checked, right?
That's right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's right. And
It's Boom, Bust, and Echo by David Foote. You ever read that book?
No.
Boom, Bust, and Echo by David Foote.
No.
So basically, he said, so after the baby boomers boomed, well, wouldn't it make sense to build businesses around the largest demographic cohort? Well, Barbie and McDonald's and the real estate bust and everything followed the boomers as they mature. And so now you're giving them, so back 60 years ago, you were giving them Barbies and Huggies and McDonald's. Today, you're giving them Huggies.
Man, if you go into Walmart, right, they have a huge aisle of basically Huggies for old people. Hey,
yeah,
it's a growing market. They're always looking for big growing markets, and that is baby boomers. Will never end.
in fact, you guys are trying to figure out you guys are trying to figure out where to dip your ass into Achilles, right? In the river Styx, like Thetis, right? You guys are fixing that right now.
Right? I mean,
You guys are building, hey, why don't we just build a river Styx and we'll have it a good life? Right?
Oh, yeah,
but yeah, you just dip a pool, you go swimming in, you're good for another 10 years. Now you're like Ra's al Ghul and Batman.
It's why I watch YouTube a lot because I'm a news junkie, and all the ads are baby boomer. Not all, but there's at least half the ads are baby boomer shit. There's like a new kind of walker. There's a pill you can take so that you're cognitively alert. You could just go down. I mean, if you wanted to really figure out what's going on in the world, at least on one side, all you have to do is get AI on television commercials. That's it. And you'll know who's growing, what messages they get. Once you know what messages they get, then you know what messages resonate. And if you know what messages resonate, then you can start saying interesting things about cultural change.
So here's the weird thing. If I know anything, so you've seen, so we're connected because of Twitter, right? Through
Right.
Having a conversation on Twitter with other people about God knows what. I don't even know what they're talking about half the time.
The way it worked, it's so funny how this happened. And this was only about 2 or 3 days ago, I think.
It's not that long.
No, certainly within the last week. There's a woman named Debbie Gleason that she and I have been tweeting to each other for a very long time. Mm-hmm. She writes beautiful poetry. She's also a hero.
Is that Michigan?
That's Michigan.
So, I don't know anything about Debbie. You say she's a hero. Do you mind? I don't know if she would mind.
She's a hero because she had 2 kids. I don't know if they're both girls. 2 girls with very serious learning disabilities, but serious shit, right? And she just recently had a bout of cancer. And she's a boomer, I think. I don't think she's as old as me. She's not a leading edge boomer. She's right behind me. She goes to demonstrations. Her heart is in the right place. With all the crap that she has to deal with, she's on Twitter. Still very forward looking. The woman's a hero, man. She's a serious hero.
Yeah, I don't think without her we would have been introduced, right?
No,
because it was a thread that she introduced us, and that was the whole
That was the whole thing.
Upside down flower that's now being created, right?
Nice way to talk.
Have you? No, I'm saying, like, have you seen the visualization of the thread?
No.
I never sent that to you. I'll send it to you.
No.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting to see how it's connected. A guy wrote an app who can create a tree out of Twitter threads.
Really? Is that app on the street or is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. Hold on. You want me to?
No, later. Because
I
I can't
yeah.
get anything from
Okay,
you.
no worries. But yeah. So
That's very cool.
it's just interesting that when you talk about media. So if I know anything, it's not because I'm a mathematician. It's not because I'm a scientist.
Right.
Well, I'm not wearing a lab coat, let's say.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I started doing stand-up maybe about a decade ago.
You did stand up?
Yeah, I started doing stand-up because I was fed up
God,
working.
how long did you do it?
Well, I feel like I'm
How
still
long
doing
did you
it.
do stand up?
Does that make sense when I feel like I'm still doing it?
I've always stand up is something I love, but I could never do it because I wouldn't be brave enough. What
And
happens when you get out there and you totally bomb and you get that absolute silence and nobody gets it and you're up there talking to yourself? Fuck. I can't imagine. Yeah, I'll bet.
it's the worst. It's probably the most lonely you could probably feel because not even the girl you came with wants to sit beside you after you bomb. You understand that whoever your girlfriend is just wants to slip out the back fucking door. You understand, right? So you're on stage. You're on stage and you're like, this is not. She's breaking up with me right now, right? That's what's happening, right?
So you were saying about scientists, and then you riffed over into how does that go?
So, have you ever read Kessler? Arthur Kessler's The Act of Creation?
I know the name. I've never read any of his stuff.
Suffice to say, George Carlin mentioned that he read Kessler and that Kessler was an influential part on his comedy.
Whoa. Okay.
Right? So I'll send you the book and blah, blah, blah. But that's all you need to know about Kessler. And imagine it's 800 pages, by the way.
Yeah, I'll skim it. I'll find it.
Yeah.
The first
read the abstract, scroll to the end, read the conclusion, check the footnotes.
That is how I read nonfiction. I have a wall full of nonfiction. I read the introduction, then I go through the bibliography, and then maybe I'll read chapter.
Maybe.
Maybe.
You know what's funny? I read the abstract, I read the conclusion and the references, and maybe some of the notes, and then I scroll through. Where are your images? Oh, you use a triangle dodecahedron.
Well,
that's a normal distribution. Oh, cool. Oh, you found the normal distribution there too, huh? Cool.
When I was back studying sociology back in school, I always felt the words were the filler between the charts. Don't tell me your words. I don't care. Give me your chart and tell me what everything stands for. And that's all I want to know. And it happens. It works. It really works. You take these long papers with all these sociology words in it, and you go look at the charts and you get the story. And you figure out if you agree or disagree or what he's missing, what he isn't missing.
I remember the first sociology reader I ever had in first year.
Right.
He talks about, they talk about teleology, right? And it's like, oh, well, that's like at least 3/4 of these papers.
The author?
I know, I don't. Was it Comte?
compendium or?
Was it Comte? C-O-M-T-E?
Yeah, sure. August
Comte.
Comte. Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. Teleology.
The father of bullshit sociology.
Shut up. Causation and teleology in contemporary philosophy and science. Nevertheless, Comte's views may be well provide the blah, blah, blah. Hold on. I'm going to read this to you because you'll like this. Nevertheless, Comte's views may well provide the initial motivation and the hidden agenda underlying contemporary philosophy of science program of ... I don't even need to read the rest.
No, you don't. God, I haven't read Compton. I don't know.
Isn't that crazy? This is your fault for making me go back that far in my history. Comte, jeez.
You said someplace that you were a sociologist. Did that mean you studied sociology?
I find sociology you find on stage. Does that make sense when I'm talking about like being a scientist?
Absolutely.
So
Makes
to
total
me,
sense.
the full science is the triptych.
Go ahead.
The triptych being the joker, the scientist logician, then the musician artist.
Huh. Is this from like tarot cards or something?
This is from Arthur Koestler, cited by George Carlin, Act of Creation.
Got it. Okay.
So this is cool because I can explain it to you from fresh. So the triptych is three things: the joker, the scientist logician, artist musician, let's say.
Okay.
How might we perceive reality? All three, not just one.
There you go. Cool.
So that's
cool. That's right.
So that, first of all, that blew me on my ass. And then second, in the first 100 pages of Koestler, by the way, the triptych, this thing, is on the first page of Koestler, right? The first page of the book is this.
Perfect.
And it's all of these thought functions. Here are the joke thought functions, here are the logical thought functions, and here are the artistic thought functions. All of these functions do what? Well, they're functions. They take an input, process them, generate an output. Here's the trick, though. With a joker, an artist, you have no conception of what's going to be the output. Because these are Heptasian or non-standard processes, right? Aphorisms. Yeah. So further from that, so now that you understand the triptych, this is what blew me on my ass. Koestler provides this definition. All acts of creation are generated by the sudden bisociation of previously unrelated matrices of experience. All acts of creation are generated by the sudden bisociation of previously unrelated matrices of experience. Cool. Now, without even defining that, when talking to the math guys on Twitter, I realized that identity is the axis upon which matrices of experience rotate and perceive. Does that make sense? Every matrix of experience is experienced from the axis of identity. And to the extent that you are experiencing the macro matrix through your identity pivot, you're going to miss something. You're going to fall over it, essentially. That's Koestler. That's the first 50 pages of Koestler.
That's actually, I find that actually pretty deep. I mean,
it blew me on my ass.
It's a great way to look at it.
And then imagine I took this on stage.
You took that on stage?
The functions.
Did you
functions.
And did it work?
You have no idea. Do you understand what it's like to do math on a napkin? And then people laugh. And you're like, what the fuck is reality, dude?
No, I'm really curious. Were you able to get that across?
Yeah. You were? I'm talking about like entire bits. I'm like, yo, Quinn, what if you did this? And he's like, oh shit, okay, yeah. All right. And we're like, see, it works, right? And we're like, And you got to understand, like, once it worked, I stopped doing stand-up.
Oh,
You understand?
Yeah, it was like it sounds like it was like an experiment.
It's either that or I walk into the ocean. There's
Yeah, no, I get it.
because once you realize that a little bit of calculus and a little bit of reading and a little bit of trial and failure and willing to bomb and almost lose your girlfriend because you're dying on stage so bad, all of those things, right?
Right.
And then imagine I took it to the boardroom.
You took it to a boardroom? You mean with suits and serious people? And how did it play over there?
See, what I realized is the king doesn't know what the king can be interrupted by two people, the Joker and the Queen.
And the what?
The Joker and the Queen.
And the Queen.
Two people authorized to interrupt and in fact make fun of. Right?
Yep. Right.
So in that world, and you can see it on Twitter, right? When people sometimes they try to use their kingly character.
I haven't seen that, but go ahead.
You understand that emotion when people try to use the king energy on you. You know what I mean by the king energy? Where they might not have a great answer, but they try to.
Oh, you mean where they act like bullies and assholes? Got it.
I didn't want to say it. Just the king energy, right?
I'm allowed to say it because what do I give a shit?
But look, right. Like if anybody sees me, I'm just Mr. Oppressed guy, right? Right? So I'm just going to call it king. So you have that king giving you that king energy.
Right.
Knowing that the king is confounded by the Joker and the Queen.
Oh,
right?
That's interesting. Yeah.
So if you king me and you just keep kinging me and you just keep giving me that king energy, eventually what you do, this is just a heckler, right? This is just a heckler on Twitter. Bring it.
Right.
I'll turn another cheek. I'll turn another cheek. And
That's
all the while, I am taking notes. And the more information you give me,
perfect.
The best answer you can give to a heckler is, what was that?
Yep.
And the room.
Now I have. Okay, now I have to tell you a story about me that's totally appropriate to that.
Yeah.
I forget how early I started this. I think someplace in 2010. No, about 2016 when the Trumpistas first got on Twitter. Right now, a lot of the Trump people are bots, but you can tell pretty quickly which ones aren't. Okay. So what I would do every once in a while, I would go find one of these right-wing chat. I didn't care what anybody said because it's only fucking Twitter. What do I care? And it goes to exactly what you were saying about what did you say? Okay, because what I do as a typical trope, I would say I would quote from what they would say, right? Just copy, quote their own words, no interpretation, nothing. And then I would say something, I don't know, whatever was appropriate to say, but I never tried to convince anybody. In fact, a while ago, back in 2010, I coined the term Twitter tennis. Okay, and the way Twitter tennis works is that the job, the way you win is to keep lobbing it over the net. And whoever doesn't come back, the other guy wins, right? I would play fucking Twitter tennis with these right wingers all day and all night. It was great. And there was actually an end point, which is they stopped tweeting at me. And that's how I know you win.
You know how you know you win? When they delete their tweets.
Oh, I never went that far.
No. When they delete their tweets in response.
Oh, no, I understand. No, yeah. I've never.
You'll see if you go. If you go back into your history, you'll notice that the people who realize, oh fuck, he was right. You go back and it's like, hey, what the fuck happened to the whole thread?
Wow.
And it's like, oh no, they deleted everything. But the beautiful thing is that there's a history.
I had an analogous thing last night, actually. I follow local politics, and we have a little group, or it's not we have, there is a little group that talks about our local congressperson.
Mm-hmm.
And it just started, and somebody posted a thing about, oh, there's a troll over on Nancy Gorov's page. So immediately I said, cool. And so I went over there, and we went back and forth a couple of times. And then I saw she left the group. So I win.
And so that's what, it's almost like there's this phrase, don't feed the trolls. And I think that's weak. Weak. As a comic, the heckler is the biggest source of laughs in any show.
That's right.
Right?
Right.
Yo, I'm gonna tell a dirty joke, right? But this came out of a heckle. My buddy was on stage, and this girl just kept heckling throughout the show. And he would make jokes about it, and she just kept heckling, and she just kept heckling, and he just kept heckling. We're gonna cut this out.
Right.
Maybe I might include this on a different podcast. But the joke was like, "Where are you from?" He finally asked the woman, "Where are you from?" And she goes,
"Okay,
I'm from wherever she's from." And he goes, and it was
that was that.
You got to understand, this is like maybe 2 hours and 90 minutes into a show, right? She just interrupting the whole show, right? But let me tell you something. It's flat in the room. The room was over. He could have just dropped the mic and walked out, right? But how did that happen? Because deviance is a functional part of society.
Agreed.
Because of what it communicates to everyone else. And some people think utopia is the complete absence of deviance.
Yeah, but that's I actually think that America is the best place in the world exactly because we're so fucking loud and arrogant and we'll fight each other. I mean, it's a thing. No offense about Canadians. I love Canadians. Canadians are really rational and kind, and they have their feet on the ground, and they're terrific. But I don't think it would work for me because you don't have the passion. You know, over here, like I live in New York, and everybody in New York thinks they're smarter than everybody else in New York. And
exactly
it's
like
true. Toronto's like that.
Yeah, because now we just surpassed you for and Silicon Valley for IT job hiring last year.
No shit.
Yeah. So you know how you guys are fighting over Amazon? They're hiring people and they're building offices in Toronto without any, you know. So while you guys are losing HQ too, we're like,
no, we didn't.
Come on down.
Yeah, live and be well. Have HQ too. I give a fuck. In New York,
we need it more than you guys.
Exactly. We need another big employer like Amazon. You know, they were going to put that building in Long Island City.
Yeah.
We need them like a whole in that area. The only people who enjoyed it were the real estate people who would watch their real estate pop. But it totally ignored the local community. It would have led to enormous gentrification. The last thing we have to worry about is IT jobs in New York. I mean, give me a break. So I'm glad, and I'm glad they went to somebody
Yeah.
where they need them. Terrific.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing too,
I
because
had no idea though that Toronto was an IT hiring center. That's
well,
interesting, huh?
see, what people wouldn't know about Toronto is that Toronto is not Toronto. I'll explain what I mean.
Go ahead.
Toronto is in relatively geographic, therefore traveling distance by train from Ottawa,
Right.
Montreal,
Okay.
Waterloo,
Okay.
New York,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So what happens when we need a new software engineer? Hey, Waterloo, you want to jump on a train? Yeah, sure. Hey, we need something done. Hey, talk to the guy in Ottawa,
Right.
right? Hey, we need some AI done and some, just get the video game
Yep.
done in Montreal, right? So we have a spider, but people don't see the spider, they only see Toronto.
That's cool. Right.
So that's why they're looking to build Hyperloop and
Gotcha.
this
Also,
monorail.
yeah. And also, am I right? Am I right that Toronto is a very diverse city?
It's interesting
Or is
because
that
it is diverse, but diverse sometimes means, you know how some people think diverse means that every pixel is on the screen is emitting white light, which is all colors, or something like that. Does that make sense?
back up on that and give me a
I'll
different
explain.
picture?
So diversity, the way it plays out is that the most diversity, how can I explain this? In Toronto, we have a lot of diversity, but it can
Okay.
seem very monocultural depending on where you are in the city.
Oh, of course. So you have ghettos. You're trying to tell me you have ghettos like everybody else? Is that what you're saying?
So we have
Welcome,
Greektown and
welcome to the
Koreatown
world.
and Chinatown and Indiatown and every kind of town where you got,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Jamaica
but
Town.
that's always every city. I've never, any city I've ever been to has the same thing because people like to be with people like them. Why should I move into like a place where I don't have people like me? That's who I want to live with. And for me, it doesn't have to do with color of skin. Be educated, and they have to be this, and they have to. I mean, just so you know, I live in Park Slope in Brooklyn, and if you Google Park Slope, it's like one of those places, you know. It's like Berkeley or something, except for older people. So we're not here.
Like,
in fact, what they say is that Williamsburg is where the hipsters live, right? And Park Slope is where they go to breed.
Yes, we have those too. In Toronto.
Oh, you have that?
Yeah. In Toronto, where I grew up, Malvern is where you're born. When you get a job, you move out east to Durham or Ajax. Right?
Okay.
And then you take the train into the city. They call them a bedroom community because all you do is sleep there.
Right. Actually, if you look around all the cities, and that's one of the really interesting things to me now, is that you look at every city that I've seen, and there's always the district where there's hipsters. There's always And hipsters are weird. They're not. They're just a different class of people. And then you have areas like
Are
Park Slope.
hipsters North American gypsies?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. They'll be in New York for a couple of years and then they'll move to Atlanta. And then they'll be in Atlanta for a couple of years. But the funny thing
No
is,
wonder nobody likes them, because I hate them in Europe too.
but the funny thing is,
My cousins have been complaining about gypsies in London for 20 years, and I was like, what the fuck's a gypsy? Now I know what a gypsy is. They're a European hipster, and hipsters are North American gypsies, only they smell worse.
there you go. I love that. No, that is so funny.
Right? I
Hey,
mean,
listen. So we've totally wasted, as they say on Click and Clack. We've totally wasted a good hour of our lives.
let me put this
so
together. I think this is
we
great.
have enough to do.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm
Cool.
gonna press stop recording now.